everybody. I'm Jackie K. Cooper, and I've got a special treat for you today. I have with me Stephen Kendrick of the famous Kendrick brothers, who have now. Did y'all produce the new film?
Yes, I mean we executive produced it, and then we set up a team up underneath us. So there was a main line producer, Mark Miller, and then director Rick Altizer. But well, yes,
usually I look for y'all's names in the credits, and there was only said additional editing, Alex Kendrick. That was the only time I saw y'all's names even mentioned. But it showed me the father.
Yes,
opened last Friday. It's been out almost a week when we're recording this. And Stephen, how would you describe the film?
Imagine awesome and inspiration in a blender, and you go in with low expectations thinking, is this just going to be a boring documentary?
That's exactly.
And it feels like a feature film, and grabs your heart, takes you on a roller coaster ride, and you sit at the end and you're like, what just happened to me?
That is absolutely, because I have talked to people and they've said, oh, that's a documentary. And I said, no, it's a movie based on true facts, and the characters play themselves.
Yeah, there you go.
Because it has the impact of a movie, and I don't want people to miss that.
Yes,
that you get the same emotional involvement, even more so in certain cases than the same as you did with Courageous, Overcomer, Fireproof, Facing the Giants, etc.
War Room, yes.
But I worry about that people aren't getting the message on this film. That's what we're here for.
Sure.
We can tell everybody, because it is almost like a plotted drama where you have all of these stories and they all blend into one.
Right. Yes, and we started off with there's this epic aspect of fatherhood that you see in scripture. You see it in prisons. Fatherlessness is the common denominator of people in prisons. You see it in teenagers that are depressed and suicidal. Fatherlessness is like one of the number one causes. Kids that are on drugs ties back to fatherlessness. Even school shooters are disconnected from their dads is one of the aspects of that. So we've taken this epic issue and we've come back to everybody has a father story. Whether you loved your dad or you hated your dad, it's connected to your heart, and you feel it in your heart when you start talking about your relationship with your dad and what you thought about him growing up and what he did to you, good or bad. And so we want to redeem that story for good and let people heal, get a vision for where it can go, and to challenge and inspire men. So we don't beat up men with this, but we're telling 5 epic true stories that interweave together, and they land with a better understanding of the fatherhood of God, because he created fatherhood on earth. And but also a lot of people, they're just having breakthroughs in their lives. I had a guy last night tell me he watched it in the theater on Friday night. He said, I went and sat in my truck and cried for 20 minutes. He said, it so deeply blessed me and moved me, because you feel loved at the end of this film.
Absolutely.
When was the last time you watched a movie and you felt loved by God at the end,
But tell me this, do you remember, were you sitting around with Alex and Shannon or whoever, and you said, oh, let's do a movie about fathers? I mean, what was the impetus?
Sure. Well, we made the movie Courageous because our dad had a huge impact on our lives. It was his resolution that was kind of the chain breaker in our family, because his dad and grandfather were alcoholics, were unfaithful to their wives. Our dad grows up with an emotional disconnect from his dad. He had insecurity, fear issues. And so our dad grows up with all this stuff. But he shifted and said, you know what, I'm going to follow God. I'm going to give my life to Christ. I'm asking God to change my heart. And I'm going to be faithful to my wife. And I'm going to take care of my kids. And I'm going to try to live right. And that resolution rocked our family in a good way. Mm-hmm. And so we grew up in a home I told people not stumbling upon my dad looking at pornography, but stumbling upon him on his knees praying. You know, he kept his promises. You know, he apologized when he blew it. You know, he was a hero for us. And so we featured in the movie Courageous this resolution kind of concept. And Courageous has had 10 years of international impact with amazing stories that have been connected to it, because men oftentimes have been wounded by their dads. They don't even know what loving, responsible fatherhood is supposed to look like. They're guessing. And so when you give them a vision for that, the light bulbs go on and they're like, I know what to do now, you know? And so in Show Me the Father, we were thinking you can communicate so much truth in so little time with a documentary. But I don't like boring talking head documentaries. You know, I want to watch something that's really grabs me and it feels like a feature film. So we intentionally shot it, edited it, you know, original musical score, everything, interweaving it together so that you feel like you're watching a movie. And by the end, you know, you're overwhelmingly blessed in a good way.
Oh, by the way, your cinematographer, whoever it was, is great, because it was visually a beautiful movie. The overhead shots and all that. I love stuff like that. But let me ask you this. Has there been any blowback from women saying, what about us?
No. In fact, they have said, finally, somebody is saying to my husband what I wish that I could somehow articulate or communicate. But as you know, in the movie, we feature my daughter's adoption story. My wife is sharing about her perspective from a mom. Carol Denise Bridge, Dylan McCullen's mom, that he discovers in his journey, is sharing her heart. Sherman Smith's wife is talking. So you get a female perspective sprinkled throughout the film. But even women are saying, I had a dad, and I'm learning things about the fatherhood of God in the midst of me talking about fatherhood. Because every little girl is growing up longing for her dad to tell her he loves her and she's beautiful, you know, and that he'll take care of her and be there for her. And he's cheering her on to go be successful in the world. So women love this film. And so it's been very encouraging for us that even though we're aiming specifically at this issue of fatherhood, it does not undermine or devalue women, you know.
How did you pick the stories that you told? How did you come across these stories? Because they are, you know, if it weren't true, you wouldn't believe it.
Right. So when they say that, you know, truth is better than fiction sometimes, or stranger than fiction sometimes. And we started on the journey in the fall of 2019, interviewing experts that are in the fatherhood space, dozens of them. Just tell me your story. Tell me why you are passionate about fatherhood or trying to help fatherlessness. What have you seen, heard, learned? And so we're learning from them, the research, the stats. You know, we featured a little section about the stats of fatherlessness in the first half of the film, but they were also sharing stories. Some of them were their own stories, and some of them were people that they were connected to. And somebody brought up, they said, you know, Jim Daly at Focus on the Family, you know, he grew up fatherless and his dad was an alcoholic, and his story is amazing. You know, so we didn't know what that story was. So we called him, interviewed him, we started realizing, oh, wow, this could be really strong if we can just get him to tell his story, but with his guard down, emotionally, you know, comfortable to be able to be transparent. And his interview was phenomenal. And just, you know, we intercut from photos of him growing up as he's telling the story, but it's heart-wrenching and inspiring. And, you know, as he's walking through that, the Sherman Smith story, I was at a dinner at an event, and they said, you know, if you're doing something about fatherhood, you got to look at the Sherman Smith story, because ESPN did a piece on him, and they said they got greater response than any other E60 story they'd ever had, based upon what happened with him and Dylan McCullen, that whole coaching, mentoring relationship and all that stuff. So we dove into that, called him, interviewed him, and we were like, man, this is rich. It got better and better the deeper we dove. So we flew a team up to Nashville, interviewed him, flew somebody out to interview Dylan McCullough, and then their wives and their families and stuff. And so that was really, really cool. I wasn't planning on my daughter's adoption story being even featured at all. But when we were looking at the stories that we had, my brother Alex is like, there's a hole here that we need to fill. And Stephen, your daughter's adoption story is going to fill that hole. And so I was like, I'm willing to do it if it's going to help the film, but it's not about me, you know? And so, but we ended up shooting that, and that I was really grateful how that cut together. And I didn't realize that my wife was going to be so awesome with what she shared. I cry when it's pouring out her heart, you know, every time I watch the film. So,
all that, and we're not going to give anything away here, because I don't want to give anything away here, because I want everybody to experience just like I did. But the impact of that story in its totality was, I think I wrote you and said, that was just a blessing to me. And for you to share that was so great that you did. And I don't know, just so personal. All the stories are good, but that one, stood out to me. And was just,
so how did you, when you saw the movie, Jackie, how did you process it? Would you go home and tell your wife? I'd love to hear your perspective.
Well, I went home and sent my son an email and said, you need to take your son and go see this movie. I've already seen it, so I can't see it fresh with you, but I want you and him to see it fresh together.
Yes.
Because I think there are lessons in the movie for all of us,
sure.
at all ages and all relationships. And there are such complexities as this movie shows, and how different people are affected in different ways.
That's right.
But it was amazing. And I really want people, though, not to hit that barrier of documentary and
right.
But no, because it is a movie. It is an enjoyable, very, very good movie. And if you enjoyed the other Kendrick brother movies, you're gonna enjoy this, which we have to talk about too. Courageous on the 24th of September is
it's coming up. We're 2 weeks away.
Re-released with additional footage and a new ending.
Yeah. Yep. So Courageous, the original version of Courageous came out in 2011. We shot it in 2010. And during 2020, production is shut down across the nation because of COVID. We were thinking in 1 year, it'll be the 10-year anniversary of Courageous coming out in theaters. And we have not only grown as filmmakers and learned a lot over the last 10 years, because we would make the movie better and different, but also this issue is just as relevant as it's ever been. And we've got a new generation of young men that have become dads, millions of them become dads in the last 10 years that probably have never seen the movie, or they would watch it differently now that they're holding their own kids in their arms. And so we thought, what if we went back and re-edited the movie, remastered it, recolored it, added in new establishment shots, added in bonus scenes that people never saw that we shot 10 years ago. What if we shot a new ending and showed where these officers were 10 years later? What if we shared some of the stories of the impact it's had? So the movie starts off with us sharing some of the cool stories that have happened over the last 10 years around the world. Then the opening scene is the most, shot out of the gun opening scene of any of our movies, with that whole truck jacking scene. And then, but it flows better. It looks better. We beefed up the sound. We enhanced the music. The whole movie is a better experience for people. If people loved Courageous the first time, they're going to love it even more now.
But did you have to get you talked about 10 years later with the officers, did you have to get all the cast back together to do that?
Some of them. We didn't get all of them, but we got them, all the main officers. We flew them back in from across the nation. And one of the things we love about those guys is we cast solid guys that believed in the message of fatherhood 10 years ago. And they're all still very passionate about it. Ben Davies didn't have any kids 10 years ago. He was fresh out of college and at UGA, but he now has 2 kids, and he's like, man, this really means something to me now. I've got 2 daughters and I'm like, excited about, this message even more so. So Robert Amaya has been the Snake King, for years, and had traveled and spoken, and Kevin Downs has been making other feature films and stuff too, but he's passionate about the issue of fatherhood. And so it was really great to get that whole group of guys back together. We did it last fall, and we shot that new ending that people I think are going to enjoy.
Well, now, coming up, it's been what, 2.5 years since Overcomer?
Right.
Are we going to have to wait 2.5 more years to get a new Kendrick Brothers movie?
No, Lord willing, we've got one that we filmed in the spring that we're editing right now that we hope to release next year. So.
Oh, see, now that's great news.
Yeah, that's great. So it's crazy that we've been working on 3 movies at the same time. And that we've got Show Me the Father that's in theaters right now. And then we've got Courageous Legacy on September 24th coming out. And both of these movies, even though Courageous Legacy is PG-13, there's no profanity in this movie. You can take your kids to see it. It has some intense, dramatic moments, but kids leave inspired. I'll let my kids watch it. It's an inspirational movie. And Show Me the Father is the same way.
It's a PG, isn't it?
Yeah. And Show Me the Father is PG.
But I looked at, tried to find what obviously I missed. It said thematic.
Yeah, thematic evidence. I think the scene where the cops are chasing the guys and they've got drugs that they find.
Yeah,
that is one of the elements. And then at the end, there's that scene where the guy is trying to shoot the cop that's standing at the door of his car. And they're like, okay, that's kind of intense. And the music made it even feel more intense because we had some intense music right there. So, but we're believers in trying to be creative, and we don't want people to leave offended or brokenhearted, or that we've been a stumbling block to them morally in any way. We want to bless people, not curse them with our films. And so, but it's exciting to us. This past weekend, Show Me the Father was given an A+ cinema score, which is very rare. And it's like, I've heard it was only the second time a documentary has been given an A+ cinema score. It's only the second A+ this year of all the movies that have come out in theaters. So audiences that saw the film raved about it. But Courageous got an A+ years ago. And I'm like, that's really cool that we got 2 movies that are coming out in theaters. And both of them, one 10 years ago and then one now, are doing well, and that people are resonating with them. But I would encourage people, don't be afraid of COVID. If you want to wear a mask, do it. But it's a great time to take your family back to the theater and watch something wholesome. With all the junk that's going on in the world, you will leave encouraged and inspired.
And, Stephen, one thing, I think back about the first time I met y'all. I came down to Columbus, and I was just nobody, and y'all treated me like I was with the Atlanta Journal or something. You were so kind to me. And then every time I've seen you, your enthusiasm never lags. You're still as committed now as you were then. It's not like, okay, I've done this,
right,
we may get another movie or whatever. But no, you're really intense, and it is your mission.
Well, and God has changed my heart, and I love introducing people to His love, because I have seen in ministry for 20 years in ministry, I've seen people radically transform when it goes beyond just a mental assent to when they genuinely have a heart transformation. And so it's exciting to be able to share truth in our films, and that people all over the world, the light bulbs go on and they walk out thinking, I understand myself better, I understand my family better, my world better, I understand God better, but I had a blast watching an entertaining movie at the same time. So I've told people I don't want meals to just be nutritious, I want them to be delicious. And I think that movies ought to be both. If it's just eye candy and ear candy, and you're like, oh, well, that was fun, I laughed for a few minutes, then you walk out and you're no better and you really need your 2 hours back to, then I feel like the movie failed in my eyes. So
one last thing, and what I want to compliment you on, and I'm sure you're aware of this, is how many other faith-based films have been done because of your success, I think.
Well, we felt like that we were picking up the baton that was before us. I know Billy Graham came up, back in the 70s and 80s. He had this string of Worldwide Pictures movies. They were mainly ending with focusing in on Billy Graham's preaching, but there was The Hiding Place. I don't know if you remember that one.
Oh, yeah.
There was a movie called The Prodigal that came out that they did. Last Flight Out was a movie they did. But it was kind of just, they were fading out. And when The Passion of the Christ came out, we had just released a movie, Flywheel, on a $20,000 budget in our church, and it ended up exploding on DVD and sold over 1 million DVDs and went international, which was mind-blowing. But we were feeling prompted to get into feature films, but we didn't have the training or the money or the experience. And so we were praying in the money and asking God to help us to write when we didn't know how to write. And, Facing the Giants was the first one that I think that got on people's radar when that came out. And it was in 2006 in September when that movie hit theaters.
15 years ago, that's when I met you.
So when Facing the Giants came out, we've heard since then, many people that are filmmakers now say, when I sat in the theater and I watched that movie, I thought, this can be done. They're being overt, but they are being entertaining and inspirational, and I think I might can do better, and we cheer on other filmmakers. The Irwins are super talented. We've been proud of them. The first movie that John Irwin worked on was our movie Courageous. He came in as his second unit, and he was already an award-winning, super talented music video producer and director. And so we were telling him, hey, how can we help you go make feature films? And they've gone on to do, Woodlawn and Mom's Night Out, and I Can Only Imagine, and I Still Believe. And now this December, they've got American Underdog, the Kurt Warner story that they're releasing. So those guys are super talented, and they're not competition. They are our friends, and we're cheering each other on.
Yeah, but it has created a community of people who are willing to take the chance and willing to put their stories out there and willing to, to bring good entertainment with a good message. So.
Absolutely. Well, and you think back to, there were little trickles of that in cinematic history when Ben-Hur and the Ten Commandments and The Robe and Swiss Family Robinson had a little bit of faith themes in it. It's a Wonderful Life, George Bailey's praying, God help me. And you have this interaction in heaven with God, and you see even some true stories like A Man Called Peter or Sergeant York. Man, those are great movies that were made by Hollywood, and this generation has never even heard of those films, but they're great movies. And so there were little moments, and some of them were like some of the biggest movies of their day. Ben-Hur was massive. Ten Commandments was huge. And so we need a whole lot more of that, but we don't need Hollywood screwing up the stories like with Noah and Exodus, where it's a completely different story and it becomes fantasy rather than just honor the scriptures, honor the history, and then people will show up and honor this. So,
but I do believe that we need those movies those type of movies now more than ever.
Right.
I think people, there is a whole segment of the population who are crying out for movies of that type. I mean, I see everything. So, I know what's out there, and I have people asking, why does a movie that I would enjoy, and that I don't like this and I don't like that, I don't like all the violence, the gore, the profanity, etc. And when I can say, well, here's a movie, made for that is made for you.
Right. So that's right. Well, and it's sad to me I don't know how many times I want to watch a movie or somebody else is promoting one. They're like, yeah, but there's a lot of junk in it. You can't watch it with your kids, or there's that one scene, I wish wasn't in there. And I'm thinking, Hollywood is running out of ideas. It's like, okay, here's our formula. We're going to be a lot more blood and slaughter, a lot more sex and immorality, a lot more hard-hearted, calloused, stoic, evil, but they're running out of ideas. I'm like, we show goodness in our films. How about that? Why don't we, it can be very inspiring, and you can enjoy a movie that actually features people doing the right thing. I mean, and what an idea.
You do it without hammering people over the head. That to me is also, I go to church on Sunday, I have a sermon, whatever. When I go to a movie, I want a message, but I want it to be presented in a way that I don't feel
right
blasted by it. Stephen, I'm Kendrick Brothers' biggest fan. I'm so proud of y'all for what you're doing. I want people to, again, get over that documentary hump and go in there and see a good movie. And then on the 24th, we're going to be there seeing what y'all have done to redo Courageous, because that's probably my favorite of y'all's movies anyway.
Awesome.
And then to come on in spring, a new one, we'll be waiting for you.
Well, and I'll look forward to seeing your review, Jackie. I appreciate the support very much.
Listen, thanks so much for taking the time to talk.
And thank you so much. Good to talk to you, Jackie. Have a great day.
You too.